Well, hey everyone, happy Thursday. Welcome to So What, the Marketing Analytics and Insights live show. I am Katie, holding up Chris and John.
Hello. It's a miss.
It's us. This week, we are talking about setting up Claude Cowork. So, Chris and I have been talking a lot about how the heck do we get ourselves out of the weeds of running the business day to day? Because, as we've mentioned many times over, we're a very small company. And that means that we wear a lot of hats, all of us do. And we're all just trying to, keep moving forward, sometimes just not as quickly as we would like to. So, the solution is we could either hire more people, add more headcount, which quite frankly, budgets are tight all around, or we could find ways to automate more and figure out how do we use what we have and make it more efficient. And so one of the things Chris has really been talking about a lot is Claude. So Claude, as a large language model, has a lot of different things that it can do, and Chris is going to get into it. One of the things he's talked about a lot is Claude Code. We're not talking about Claude Code today. We're talking about Claude Cowork, but I think it's worth acknowledging there's Claude, the LLM chat. There's Claude Code, which Chris will talk about, and then Claude Cowork, which is what we're going to focus on today. Do I have all of that straight so far?
So far, so good.
Ooh. All right. That's where I'm going to tap out now because I don't want to get it more confused. So, Chris, over to you, Chris.
All right. So a couple of things up front. Claude Cowork is a brand new product. It is like 2 weeks old at this point. It is iterating rapidly, and it is in very limited testing. So only people on Pro or Max plans can use it. The free plans cannot use it. And it is inside the Mac version, the Mac desktop version of the Claude app. So it's not available on the web, and it's not available on Windows. According to the Claude team, they are working very quickly on a Windows-based version, and they expect to have that out soon, with the capital S soon. Exactly. So today, we're going to go over how it is right now. It is going to change. So, for example, in Cowork, skills and agents are not formally supported yet. The team, Boris Cherney over at Anthropic, has been saying, yeah, we're working on it as fast as we can. It's very funny. They actually use Claude Code to write Cowork. And so they're trying to add as many things to us as quickly as they can. Here's why it's important for us to talk about this today. Every other vendor is looking at the Claude ecosystem now and going, yeah, time to get the photocopiers, because they've got all of the buzz. They've got all, Valley investors and stuff are all paying very close attention to what Anthropic is doing and going, you know what? There's a there. Claude Cowork actually came out of Claude Code because Anthropic was looking at how people were using Claude Code and going, that's not coding. Like, you're planning your vacation. Why are you planning your vacation in Claude Code? And because it has so many tools to do automated work, like, go find me flights for this and this, and you could just come back later and it's done. That they're like, what if we made a version that didn't require you to be a gearhead just to get the bloody thing installed?
Yes, please.
And that is Cowork. So,
okay.
Let's just start digging in. The first thing you're going to need is you will need to download it from Anthropic's website. If you go, there's a Meet Claude. You can see Claude in all these different places. You are going to be looking for Claude on the desktop. And when you install that app, it looks like this. There's 3 tabs in the upper left. There's Claude Chat, which is the regular plain vanilla, let's just do the thing. There's Cowork if you're on the Pro and Max plans. And then there's Claude Code, which is their cloud-based version of Claude Code, which, to add more confusion, there's several versions of Claude Code.
If I'm looking off screen, it's because I am following along with Chris, because I just installed Claude for the desktop for myself to learn how to do this. So like, I'm literally using this live stream to learn how to do this from Chris live.
It's a company training
to us. Yeah,
exactly. So to orient you, there's a few different things. Obviously, there's the existing chat list here that we don't have any yet. There's some starter prompts that you can do there. on the right-hand side is the status panels that tell you what Claude is working on when it starts working on things. And then there's the ability to connect to a local folder on your desktop and then to use connectors. And so some of the connectors available are things like Claude in Chrome, which you can install. I've installed it on my computer with the big asterisk that it can control Chrome. That means that if you are not thoughtful in how you prompt it, you might be telling it, hey, go post some deep fakes on LinkedIn for me, right? if you didn't think that through, it will do those things. The reason why we want to use something like a Cowork is twofold. One, it has access to our local files, which is such an important thing. And I'll show you in a minute how to connect it to something, because we want to also put guardrails around it and say, this is the only little sandbox you're allowed in. You're not allowed to go other places. And it can control a browser. Those two things give it the ability to do autonomously a lot more stuff than the regular Claude chat can do.
We talked about the guardrails more in depth on the podcast this week, which you can get at trustinsights.ai/TI podcast, because that was a big question, Chris, that I had for you is, okay, so you're installing this stuff on your local machine. You likely keep sensitive data on your local machine to keep it off the web, out of Google Drive. So how do you make sure? And so, obviously we're just sort of like walking through it quickly, but if you want to get more of a deep dive, check out the podcast. Or I would also recommend joining our free Slack community, Analytics for Marketers, where we can also go into more depth and learn from everyone else what they're also doing to protect their data.
Exactly. So we're now ready to start doing some of the configuration of this. First things first, it's a good idea to give Claude its own folder per project, per task. So don't just give it access to your desktop. That's a terrible idea. Instead, give it a place on your desktop to work, and maybe even give it a folder inside that place. So on my desktop, today we wanted to talk a bit about the Trust Insights newsletter, Inbox Insights. So I've gone ahead on my desktop and I've created a folder called Inbox Insights Strategy. I'm going to tap the work in a folder here, and it's going to bring up my my file browser. I'm going to go and find my way to the Inbox Insights folder, and it will say, are you sure you want me to be able to read and write files in this folder? And for this, I'm going to say yes, because I've given you this folder to work in. Please do not just give it your hard drive. Please don't do that. It's just a recipe.
What could go wrong? What could go wrong?
Yep. And then I have also enabled the Claude in Chrome connector to allow it to control my browser, because I'm going to show an example of how that might be useful. Again, with the caveat, you want to be careful how you use it so that it's doing things intelligently and not just running amok.
It sounds like for those just starting out, maybe a phase 2 of the Chrome permission, and just sort of get used to this first before you let it take over your Chrome. Look at you, John Wall, and all those nefarious things that you're known for.
I know, just let it take your browser and go everywhere it can and start buying random stuff. That sounds like a complete recipe for disaster.
Where did all this stuff come from? All I was just doing was researching $1 million homes, and now I'm suddenly the proud owner of 5 different estates. Whoopsies.
Exactly. And a moat.
A moat. Yes.
That log cabin I've been looking for.
The next thing we want to do, it has nothing to do with Claude, but this is the part that's going to make Katie's soul happy. We want to think about the governance inside our Claude folder and how to organize it, because you just don't want to have an empty folder, just pile stuff in there. That's like, that's how my kids clean their room. They just shovel everything into the closet. I'm like, that's not how to do that, kids. My kids don't watch, thank goodness. So for this recording, I already threw some stuff in here. This is kind of a mess. What I would suggest doing is having at least 3 or 4 folders for every Claude Cowork project. And we get this from Claude Code. So I'm going to create a folder called data that's going to have data sets in it. And by the way, this is not the way to do it. This is my way of doing it. You do it your way. I'm going to have a folder called input. This is where stuff that's not structured data would go, like transcripts for me. I'm going to create a folder called output, which is where I want Claude to put things as it's working on them. And then I always personally have a folder called docs, which is where I put like rules-based documents. Again, coming from the coding world, this would be like where my code standards live. For right now, because Cowork does not formally support agents and skills, we're going to create 2 folders like this. Well, because an agent and a skill, nothing more than prompts. So we're just going to borrow existing prompts from those things. So I'm going to create a folder called agents and a folder called skills. So now I've got 4 of 6 folders here. Now let's talk about what's in this folder. For today, we want to be thinking about how are we going to. So Katie, actually, why don't you describe kind of what you noticed in our subscriber counts for Inbox Insights this week and what you want our goal to be?
So sure. If you're brand new and don't know, we have a weekly newsletter called Inbox Insights. You can go to trustinsights.ai/newsletter, brand new landing page as of last Friday. We're bringing ourselves into the whatever century this is now. And what we've noticed is that in 2025, our subscriber numbers sort of stalled out and plateaued. And then we did a deep clean and data hygiene of the list itself. And unsurprisingly, the number went down. So moving into 2026, the total number of subscribers is lower than where we were at the beginning of 2025. And to that, we know from our own data that our email newsletter is one of the largest drivers of engagement and eventually conversion for our services. So it's in our best interest to increase that subscribership, which means promoting it more, writing about topics that people care about, getting more awareness to it. There's a lot of different things that we need to do to hit a target number of subscribers in 2026. And that is the purpose of what it is we're doing today. If we were to follow the 5 Ps, the purpose is to increase the total number of subscribers to the Inbox Insights newsletter so that we can continue to see it as a strong channel that brings in engagement and conversion.
Right. Which is a fantastic use of Claude Cowork, because one of the things that makes it different than a regular chat is it will build its own to-do lists and try to do tasks if you write it out well. So the first thing we need to do is figure out, well, how do we do this? How do we put this together? And we're going to start with some basics. The first basic, which we've talked about in past episodes of the show, is our ideal customer profile. I've chosen our mid-market growth ideal customer profile from our sales playbook. And so I've just put that profile in there. It is not the entire thing, not the 135-page document. It's just this one particular segment. One thing that we've started doing is we've started removing anything involving age, A, because it's discriminatory, and B, because what we really care about is someone's ability to buy things from us. I don't care how old you are or what generation you are or what color you are or where you live. All money is green.
Well, also not a true statement, but that's for a different episode.
That is for a different episode. So we have our ideal customer profile. Second, we kind of need to know the landscape. Like, I've been in email marketing now for 30 years.
1 million years.
I'm in the Jurassic era. What's changed? What's new? And so the easiest way to get that information is to commission a deep research report. So I kicked off a deep research report following the Trust Insights Casino framework, saying, hey, Inbox Insights is this newsletter. We have this many subscribers. We want to get to this many. We have no budget for paid ads. Zero, nothing. I want to know who is the audience. I want to know, like, what's happening out in the email marketing world. Here's the sources to find. Focus on 2023, 24, 25, if it's relevant. I specifically want to know, what are the best practices for retaining your audience today? What are your best practices for acquiring new subscribers today? What are the mistakes people make when they in trying to retain subscribers, like what caused you to lose subscribers, what are the mistakes you make for when trying to acquire new subscribers. So those are the 4 big things. And of course, I'm not going to wait 15 minutes. I went ahead and ran this. The nice thing about Claude Cowork and many other systems is it can read Google Docs directly, or in my case, because I am old and I like to have things, I exported it to a Google Doc and then I dumped it as a markdown file, which is the lingua franca of AI, so that deep research report now is right here. Same exact thing, but now it's just in plain text. So the AI will have an easier time reading it.
When you said that you were old and like to have things, I was fully expecting you to say, and then I printed it out and used a binder clip and took out my highlighter. Like that to me is like printing out everything, printing out all your emails. Like that would sort of classify you as old. Making things markdown so it's easier for the AI to read, I don't think that counts.
Okay, that's fair. Now, another question that we would probably want to have some research handy on would be, or some information on, is how do we do our newsletter? Right. So one of the things I did before the show was and we're not going to play this. I spent 15 minutes of me just foaming at the mouth about how we do our newsletter, the process, who writes what the major sections are and things. I just recorded it and I turned it just with any transcription tool, transcribed into text. So we now have here's how the newsletter works. You'll notice we haven't gotten to Claude Cowork yet. We're getting all the pieces. What else would be helpful, Katie, to know if we're going to be doing some strategy about a newsletter?
Probably the existing metrics. So, I don't know if it's included in any of your background information documents, but here's our current number of subscribers. Here's our goal that we want to hit. Here's the engagement rate. Here's the open rate. Here's the rough makeup of the current subscriber list, like that kind of, because, we're saying here's our ideal customer profile, but we need to know who we have today. We need the baseline if, Claude's going to be like, that's cool. Those are 2 different audiences. So good luck with that pivot. We don't know that.
Exactly. So you are 100% right. And the easiest way for me to do that was to just take screenshots of our marketing automation system for the last full year of issues. Like, how many people was it sent to? What was the read rate? Screenshots are just fine because Claude can read images. Mm-hmm. The other thing that would be helpful is maybe to see how much of our website traffic comes from our Inbox Insights newsletter. And the place to get this would be Google Analytics, right?
Yep.
So if I go to Google Analytics, and let's go to Google Analytics here, and I go to Explore Hub and I go, I don't know what I'm doing. Crap.
Makes for a great live stream.
It makes for a great live stream. Because I have the Chrome connector turned on, I can say, I need some help building an exploration in Google Analytics to find out how much website traffic I'm getting from my Inbox Insights newsletter, which has a session source of Inbox-Insights-newsletter. Help me build this exploration to see what traffic I get to my website, trustinsights.ai. That's the host name, for every day from January 1st, 2025 onwards. If I put that in as a prompt, and then I say, use the Chrome connector to connect to my Google Analytics as the instruction, Claude will say, okay, I understand what you're trying to do here. I'm going to fire up your Chrome. Yay, there's your Chrome. I found it. And it's going to try and figure out where our Google Analytics is.
So Claude is doing this. You're not.
Here's my hands. I'm not doing anything at all.
Did you just see my blood pressure go up?
Right. This is how it starts. This is it.
I mean, I get it. I do. But I'm also like, oh, whoa.
Yep. So it's now going to the explorations. Now, I ran this. This is not fast. This takes it about 20 minutes to go that whole thing and stuff like that. So I'm gonna pause Claude, But what it came up with, okay, stop that. And you can see, by the way, this ticket up here, it says Claude MCP. That tells you this window is being controlled by Claude. So you will know that it is working on something like that. This is what it came up with. It, not me. This is what it came up with, which is correct. This is the correct way to get this data.
But okay, please continue.
It correct said host name contains trust insights AI. Session source media contains inbox insights. The value is sessions, 500 rows by date. And you have this. And now my thing would be just download this. Again, I like to have stuff. First use case, if you have a piece of software and you don't know how to use it, but you know what to ask for, you can tell Claude Cowork, take control of my browser and start doing the thing. And you can, at any point, you can go in the Claude mode, just hit stop, like emergency stop, like I just did. But if you have, say, Adobe Analytics or Adobe Launch or Salesforce or HubSpot or whatever, and you're like, I don't know how to do this, Claude Cowork, walk me through how to do this. So now it's gone from watch me do it and critique me to not just do it for me, as long as you know what to ask for.
And I think that that's the key. And so Kelsey has a question. What about in-ear insights, which is our podcast? Would you also want podcasts involved? For this particular task, no, because we're focusing specifically on growing the newsletter subscriber list. We will offline repeat this process to figure out how to grow the podcast subscriber list or the podcast downloads. And so they're both important assets, but for the purposes of this exercise, we want to specifically grow the newsletter subscriber list.
Exactly. I did mention in my prep recording that we do mention the newsletter on the podcast and, of course, on the live stream and stuff like that, so that Claude will know what all the pieces are. So I have now my Google Analytics data, which is there. I'm probably going to rename this Google Analytics so that, because Claude, as it reads file names, can understand the context of things. Another thing, actually, Kelsey had asked about earlier, no, it was last week, was, well, what about like GEO, AEO, AIO,
and XEO.
XEO, sakes. What about that?
Yeah.
To which I said, yeah, that seems like a reasonable thing to ask about. So what I did was using our own homegrown XEO tool.
This is not publicly available, by the way.
Yes. I went through, I asked Gemini, hey, I'm interested in a newsletter about marketing and AI. What you got? And so I spit out the trace file, which contains everything that Gemini asked itself about this problem and all the search terms and queries. And so that's going to go in as an ingredient, because if we're talking about growing our subscriber base, things like what topics should we talk about? What are people looking at? What is Google saying it recommends? And are we aligned with that? So that's another ingredient. And then the final ingredient is we had Kelsey working on a idea for how do we make our marketing more fresh and relevant to a broader audience. So we had her put it in the 5 Ps, because we love the 5 Ps around here.
We sure do.
And there's some great ideas in here. So that's going to be an ingredient too. So we're going to put all these things in together to Claude Cowork to try and have it sit down and think things through. So our next step is governance. We've got data. What kind of data? Where does the data go? My subscriber data, I'm going to put in the data folder, since that is numeric data, right? So that is our open rates, our subscriber bases, our Google Analytics data. I'm going to put our research data, all of this, into the input folder, because these are all inputs that we have come up with in some fashion. And I'm going to put what we currently do in the docs folder. Now that is me personally. You can put this in anywhere you like. Maybe you want it all in the docs folder, or maybe you all want it wherever. And I'm going to delete the newsletter recording video because we don't need that at all. So now I have things in sort of a sensible layout. I might, just for clarity, I'm going to put my screenshots in a folder called Mautic so that Claude understands, oh, this is from the Mautic marketing automation system. Again, the more clear I can be with labels, the better. The final thing we have to do now is we have to come up with a recipe. We have to think about how do we want to do this? And so coming up with a recipe for this. Oh, I forgot the agents. Oh, whoops. I should put some agents in here.
I want to, as Chris, as you're pulling that out, I want to acknowledge that we are more than halfway into the show and we haven't touched a large language model really at all. I mean, you started to use Claude to pull the browser data from Google Analytics. But in terms of what we're intending to do, we're still just getting set up. We're still doing requirements gathering. We're still getting all of those pieces. And I think it's important because in order to have any system, it doesn't matter if it's a large language model or CRM or whatever, you have to do this work. This is the stuff you can't skip over. This is what is going to set you apart from everyone else generating mediocre things.
And so our recipe now is going to be what we put in as the master prompt in Claude Cowork for it to go and do its thing. So I'm going to bring up a new text window here. How do we do this? How do we put together a good Claude Cowork recipe? I'm going to go out on a limb here and say, you know what's a great framework for this?
Let's see how quickly I can find it. Hold on. This one?
You got it. So we're going to start by saying you are an email marketing expert. Your task today is to help us build and refine a marketing strategy to grow the Inbox Insights newsletter from its current position of 33,000 subscribers to 40,000 subscribers by the end of calendar year 2026, which is 11 months away. So that is our purpose, right? Very clearly. In fact, I'm going to even label these. So we're going to go to purpose, people, process, platform, and performance. And just because we are all old and can't see anything, let's see if we can make this font a little bit bigger here.
You mean my trifocals aren't doing the job?
You know, it's fine. There we go. All right. So for people, inside of our folder, right? What do we have? We have things like an ideal customer profile already provided, right? Or we should have. Yep. So let me just compare. In fact, let me close the side window here and bring it like this so that we can compare. To help accomplish this task, you're going to need to focus on our ideal customer profile, which you can find in the input folder in and mid-market ICP.md. You'll also find some additional ideas for expanding our audience, if appropriate, and this is where we'll put in the 5P analysis that Kelsey did, which is this one here in the input folder. Okay, so that's the people. Any other people, Katie, that you would want to have for this recipe?
Would we want to have the baseline metrics of? Well, I guess that's more, I don't know.
That's going to be more
I guess
process.
performance is more of the baseline metrics. But no, in terms of people, I think that makes sense. I think we have the, here's our ICP and then here's additional expansion ideas. So let's figure out how this all works together.
Exactly. So next, process. You're going to review the docs folder to understand how we currently do our newsletter now. You'll then review the remainder of the files in the input folder. The B2B newsletter growth strategy document gives you an assessment of the landscape and the patterns and anti-patterns to pay attention to for building a thriving newsletter. We're going to take from there. We're going to say you'll also find an analysis by Google Gemini of what our audience typically is searching for and related search terms that you can use for understanding how they think. And we'll give it that file name. It is important to give it file names. Claude Code, which is what this is based on, knows how to read files. You'll review our existing performance in the data folder. There is a Google Analytics CSV file in that folder that shows you the web traffic from our email newsletter over the last year by day. There is also a folder called Mautic, which is our marketing automation system, and you will see 2 screenshots in there of our newsletter's current performance. And then in platform, we're going to say you have 2 different agents that you can use to review your work throughout the process. One is called Co-CEO Katie, which is an avatar of our CEO and can provide the business sense needed for evaluating a decision. The other is an agent called VOC, which stands for Voice of the Customer. Combined with the mid-market ICP, the VOC will speak for the customer and help keep us grounded in what our customer actually cares about. So those are the agent pieces. We're also going to say you also have a skill available in the skills folder called Fact Check. Use the fact check skill as you're evaluating reading documents to make sure that any assertions, claims, and statistics are valid. You'll first check the existing data, and then you can use your web search tools with a sub-agent to do additional validation. All right, and finally, the last part of the recipe is to say what we want as the output. Like, what does the output look like? Once you've gone through the entire preparatory process, you're going to think through what is the Trust Insights Inbox Insights newsletter strategy today? How well is it working? Do a full QA assessment. What's good about it, if anything? What's bad about it, if anything? What's missing from it, if anything? What's unnecessary, if anything? And then, based on those evaluations, go ahead and start building a refined, unified strategy, tactics, execution, and measurement plan that will get us from 33,000 subscribers to 40,000 subscribers. So that's our performance plan, is what Claude is going to do. So this is our recipe for Cowork. Any questions so far, Katie?
Yes, I know. Surprising. It might be included in your how we do it overview. But one of the things that we do is we offer the newsletter in a few different formats. So we have the Mautic email. I record it for YouTube. We turn that into a podcast. We also put it up on LinkedIn as a newsletter. But then there's also the dissemination strategy. Once the newsletter is completed, like, we want it to go up on LinkedIn, not just as a newsletter, but hey, did you know we have a newsletter? Kelsey's been now putting it up on Instagram. Hey, did you know we have a newsletter? And then part of her recommendation is that we put together, we expand our social footprint into other platforms. Hey, did you know we have a newsletter? And so I'm assuming all of that's included, but because I didn't actually see it, I just needed that validation.
You are correct. And that is in the 10 minutes of foaming at the mouth I did. I even talk about what UTM tracking codes we use. We have, sporadic evergreen posts, promotional tools, how we do all this stuff is in that big file. Because to your point, we want to give Claude or any LLM as much information as possible. Now, there's 2 ways we can go ahead and do this. We can either just copy and paste this and hit go, and that is perfectly fine. Or, one of the other things that we can do is we can create this as a recipe file. And the recipe file just goes into the folder. Now you might say, well, why do you need a recipe file if you've already built the prompt? Because I forget things. And so if I have the recipe file written down, then the next time I do this, when Katie says, hey, it's Q2, how about we reevaluate our strategy and go, what did I say?
Well, it's also really just a best practice for scalability is if you do things in a more consistent way and repeatable way. One of the things we know about LLMs is they're really good at those consistent repeated tasks, which help you be scalable. And so I could imagine, you could probably hook this up to like an N8N or some other agentic and be like, kick this off, once a month. and evaluate what the heck we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't even have to be there. You just suddenly get this like file delivered to you of like, here's how your newsletter's doing. Here's what you're doing. Here's what's not working. Here's some new ideas.
Exactly. So I dragged in the recipe file, and Claude says, hey, I noticed you use the 5P framework, which, again, love that. It says, this is a substantial project involving research, analysis, and strategy development. How would you like me to approach it? Full deep dive, phase approach, or start with assessment? I say, let's full deep dive. Let's go all in.
Go for it.
Um,
As John would say, what could go wrong?
And so what you can see now is it's already putting together its to-do list here. And it's got a to-do list of 12 different items. And you can see it's got a scratch pad. This is where it takes notes as it goes through this process. It says, and you can see each of the steps it's doing, reviewing the files, reviewing key documents in parallel. It has now launched multiple agents to start reading. And you can see it's assembling its notes on each of the files as it reads through them.
And is that all stuff that we as humans can then access to see the notes that it's taking to start to learn how it's quote unquote thinking about it?
Yes, you'll be able to get that once it's done.
Sure. Yeah. I don't want you to start pressing buttons and exploding it. I actually want the results of this analysis.
This, by the way, this might take some time.
Sure.
Just fair warning. But what it's doing now, so it's done the to-do list. It's now looking at the Mautic screenshot files. Let's see. Older campaigns, early 2026, email sent status. Let's check the fact check skill, then proceed with the analysis. And so now it's reading our skills. It got to a point where it was like, I don't have high confidence in the information you provided. I need to go and do some fact checking, which is pretty darn cool. It says I'm going to run 4 different agents. I'm going to fact check your research, which, okay.
But also helpful because we're humans and we make mistakes.
Oh yeah.
We're also biased humans, to be all of us collectively, John especially, to what we think is the right answer. So, using tools like this, I feel like is a good way to pull yourself out of it and not say, my agenda is this. It's here's what's best for the voice of customer. That's something I struggle with. And this is why I really enjoy these tools, because it's allowed me to take my own personal, here's what I think we should do out of it. I let the data drive a lot of those decisions.
Yep. And you can see as each of these agents run, they have their own decomposable task list. So you can see in the B2B strategy claims, it has kicked off 6 different web searches to try and figure out if what is in that deep research document from Google is actually true or not. It was not for this project. For a different project, I was using Claude Code, and I had it use the fact check skill on a piece of deep research. Claude came back and said 27% of this document is fabricated from a Gemini deep research thing. It went out, it checked Gemini's sources, which are in the document. It read through each of Gemini's sources and said 27% of this deep research is fabricated. And I'm like, awkward.
I like how Claude is throwing shade at Gemini. When the LLMs start fighting, you know that you've completely lost control and you've entered into John Wall's best/worst nightmare.
This is it. Virtual war. They're actually punching each other behind the screen here.
Exactly. So let's see what it's done so far. It's gotten through these items, not to-do list. It looks like it's consulted co-CEO Katie already. And now it is on the comprehensive growth strategy part of the plan, which is step 11 in our plan.
So while this is finishing up running, and then we can go over the results, let's talk for a second about cost. So using these kinds of tools, for the most part, are not free. They cost you something. They cost the company something. Can you just walk through, Chris, at a high level, if someone were to watch this live stream today, go download, Claude desktop, what kind of expenses should they expect? Like, what can they do for free? And then where do the costs kick in?
So Claude, Cowork, and Code all bill against your weekly allotment of server usage at Anthropic. So Anthropic has like a little meter, if you will, of your usage of its software to say like, hey, this is how much you've used. So if I'm going to pull, I don't want to touch what's in Cowork. So I'm going to open up Claude Code, but the same thing is available inside your Claude desktop application. You can type in usage and it will show you. For this week, I've used 60% of the compute budget that Anthropic has allowed us, right? Just since we started, I've used 5% because this reset at noon. So I've used 5%. Claude gives you a 5-hour window of how much budget you're allowed to use within any given 5-hour period, and then a weekly overall budget. So just on what we've done so far, I've already used 5% of it, and we haven't gotten a result yet.
Mm-hmm.
This is on the Max 20 plan, which is the most expensive plan. If we were using Claude Pro, which is the baseline entry-level plan, we would basically be at the 5-hour usage mark now. So you would be able to get through one of these every 5 hours of what we've done so far. And of course, it says you can add a credit card and we'll bill you API costs if you need to desperately need to finish a project. I have not done that.
Thank you.
I have I have read through many complaints on Reddit and other places where a 30-minute session inside Claude Code can cost you $5,000.
Oh. I mean, first, I would figuratively slaughter you, and second, I would be begging John to find us more business to cover those costs.
Many a tech company crushed by overage. This is a recurring theme.
But I think that, it's definitely worth acknowledging because, and they don't have to be, but these systems aren't upfront about what that looks like. They're just like, oh, by the way, you did the thing, here's the bill, versus, hey, you're coming up on your usage. You want to maybe pause here. It's like, no, you go ahead, you do all the things. John, I'm going to sucker you into this whole conversation about how you're going to include your sales and you're going to improve everything. And, oh, you've been at this for a few hours. Great. Here's your bill. Hair flip. That's pretty much how it's. So I feel like it's worth acknowledging, it's not a buyer beware. It's a buyer, keep your eyes open and make sure you, again, use the free version to test out all the features and push the buttons and do the things. But to do this kind of work, you want to really be thoughtful about the projects that you're launching so that you don't, basically, you don't have me reaching out to you, tagging you in everything with a WTF, what happened?
Yep.
Because those of us who control the purse strings do not like surprises.
So Claude has finished after about 5 minutes of thinking this through. It says, here's all the things that I worked through. And of course, with any of these things, you can tap through and then see what logic it went through. Its data analysis. It highlighted some fact-checking results, like some things that are true and are not true, which agents it consulted. And ultimately, what it spit out was a Word document. Thanks, Claude. I should have asked, please put this in Markdown, but you know what? Here we are. So inside our strategy document now, we have an exec summary of the core challenge, strategic thesis. Retention is the new acquisition. And the zero budget environment with the team of 4, the most efficient path to 7,000 subscribers is activating the existing 33,000 as a distribution channel while simultaneously fixing discovery gaps and operational efficiencies. Of course, it said, for example, in the Gemini trace, which I looked at, there were some quotes from me in Zapier's email marketing blog that made it in, but not Trust Insights. So it's like, hey, you need to follow the recommendations to make sure Trust Insights is creating more content about the agentic AI things that people are asking about. I didn't specify a list hygiene policy. Well, we do have one, which I just did not narrate it. So our next revision would be for me to start narrating. Oh, by the way, I forgot to tell you, we send this out on Wednesdays. Of course, there's going to be a Wednesday spike. Duh. And here's what our list hygiene policy looks like. Here's how we clean our list. execution layer monthly, partnership swaps. And that goes through, here's your current state assessment, your competitive landscape, your QA assessment, what's good, what's bad, what's missing, referral program, no referral program, execution layer content, templates, workflows, how-tos. One of the big things they highlighted in both the Gemini trace as well as the best practices is a lot of the people who are talking about the same things we are, as much as it annoys me and corrodes my soul, they're like, hey, copy paste this prompt for instant chat GPT results, right? So they're suggesting have more giveaway content in the content itself that people can take action on immediately. So execution layer content, progressive profiling. So we forgot to tell it, we do surveys. So that is something we would need to revise. Partnerships, AI content, optimized structure, open rate obsession. Get over it.
I wouldn't say that I'm obsessed. I think Claude's putting words in my mouth.
In there, that is coming from the screenshots of Mautic, where open rate is the most featured metric.
Oh, sure.
In there. 48-hour LinkedIn delay. That was one of the recommendations from the deep research, was make sure your email newsletter goes out 2 days before it goes out on LinkedIn, so that subscribers have an incentive. And it's saying that doesn't seem like it's necessary. So it was fact checking the deep research to go, no, that doesn't make any sense. And then trying to be everything to everyone, don't do that. Voice of the customer reality check, right? So the customer response, prompt libraries, webinar access, and things like that. Cool. Warning signs, more than one email per week, unsubscribe trigger. Yep, which we know. Gated content creep feels like a bait and switch. That's from here's the free webinars you have to register from in the content of the newsletter itself. Interactive polls feels like engagement theater that benefits the sender, not the reader. That's fair. We guilt trip re-engagement emails, guarantee unsubscribes. That's from the deep research. It goes through the math. And then, okay, here's your execution plan. List hygiene. Audit everywhere I'm found and make sure that Trust Insights is in my bio everywhere it's found. We already do a pretty good job of that, but we need to make sure that we can do that with some search. Do a referral program for inside the newsletter itself. Do some deliverables within the newsletter itself. So every month have something that people can get that they can only get from the newsletter. So you have to stay subscribed to get the AI marketing prompt library or the mid-marketing marketing budget template, and so on and so forth. And then the partnership stuff as well. And then scaling it up. Activate or grow a pulse for your evergreen newsletter posts. Test Substack syndication. Automate jobless sourcing as an efficiency. And so those are its tactical things. So this is what it came up with after a decent amount of sharing. There's some revisions that need to be made, and there's some additional feedback we need to give Claude to say, oh, by the way, I forgot to tell you this, and this. I forgot to do this. And then you modify the recipe and say, Claude, run the recipe again. And that's the beauty of Claude Cowork, is instead of having to redo a prompt chain, don't save, I can literally just give it the revised recipe, hit go, walk away, and come back in 15 minutes, and I've got a V2 of the strategy.
And I know we went through it quickly, but I think I'm a little underwhelmed because and maybe this goes into the revised recipe. One of the things that I'm looking for is, where do we get those new subscribers from? So it's saying re-engagement or, keeping the existing subscriber base. That's great. But in terms of, we defer to LinkedIn because it works really well for us. But are we supposed to be on other social channels saying, hey, did you know we have a newsletter that talks about these things? I feel like that recommendation, those tactics, maybe I wasn't clear about what I was looking for from the performance, and we can revise that recipe. But and again, it's my own bias and I'm acknowledging it. I feel like the newsletter itself, the content is solid. It's because we get that feedback from readers every week of hey, this was great. Hey, this was helpful, that kind of thing. But where do we let new audiences know, hey, we have this thing. It's established. People like it.
So you would absolutely include that as guidance to say, The acquisition side needs to be beefier. Like you would
Mhm.
revise that recipe. And again, that is the beauty of Claude Cowork, is I can say, change that recipe, rerun, and I'll come back when you're done, right? Or I provided another recording. So now there's 3 recordings in this folder here of stuff. Go do it, and I'll come back when it's done. And so it now acts as a true agent that goes off and does something and comes back. I don't have to, you notice when it was running, at no point other than giving the permissions for the folder initially, did I have to go back and babysit this thing. It was just kind of off doing its thing, and I could be doing other stuff like this live stream. That's where this is valuable. Now, imagine starting to take it and say, okay, well, great. Now that maybe you have an execution plan for that evergreen scheduling. You might say, okay, I agree with you. I need some evergreen post content. I'll log into my Agorapulse account, and Claude, you're going to schedule it for these days and times. Here's the files in the folder. Here's the recipe. Go off and schedule this for me in Agorapulse. And then you walk away and come back and it's done. Now, you should check its work, and maybe the first couple times watch it carefully to say, like, Claude, that's not the right account to be doing this in. But you can see how it leads to, I'm going to take away this task that requires no executive function, no planning, organization, decisions, or problem solving. Scheduling social content does not require that. I'm going to get this execution task and get it off my plate.
So one of the questions that I had, and I asked this again on the podcast, trustinsights.ai/TI podcast, why would someone use this instead of the web version of Anthropic Claude, the chat, and basically just upload all of those files, give it the same recipe you gave it? Like, why would someone want to do this desktop version versus the web version? Obviously they're using chat and not Cowork. So, can you just at a high level just walk through why one is better than the other, or they're the same, or whatever?
That's a very good question. So there's 2 reasons that you would do this. Number 1, you want this autonomous agent-driven version. The regular chat doesn't have that. You'll notice if we scroll back up here, you can see the times that it kicked off multiple sub steps, like doing all of these web searches by itself, you running the co-CEO by itself. Because it was in the recipe, I didn't have to do that. If you do that in the desktop version, in the regular chat, you have to manually do each of these steps. Now you can, and that's totally fine if you're a person who wants to just do that copy pasting manually. However, the other thing is the big thing. Every time one of these sub processes run, it runs in its own short-term memory. All AI has what's called context windows. Claude's is 200,000 K, which is about 150,000 words. In this folder, we have so much content, and there's such a large data set that if you did this in one chat, Claude would give you, I'm out of memory, about halfway through, because it would not be able to keep in memory all of these documents. When these agents run, they run and they come back with a short summary of what they did. And that allows the orchestration side of things to keep things on the rails, because it doesn't have to just try and keep everything in memory all the time. You can see in its scratchpad and its working folder, it knows where those documents are, and it can search within them and get references, but it doesn't have to try and remember everything all at once.
Gotcha. So it's really just a matter of your working style. If you want to give it piece by piece and sort of refine things as you go, using the web version of chat is totally fine. But if you have all of the pieces, if you did sort of what we did and get everything together, get all the data, all the requirements, get the recipe, and then just let it go run in the background, then Cowork, the desktop version of Claude, is a better option. But they both connect to the same account. So this is our client services account. So would I be able to see this data in the web version?
Not on the web. You'd be able to see it in your desktop version of Claude, but not on the web, because Cowork does not exist on the web.
But you can see the chats.
You can see the chats.
Which we're not showing on this live stream for obvious reasons.
That's correct.
Because, John does very private conversations within our Claude chat.
Yeah.
No secrets.
The other thing is repeatability.
Yeah.
When you use the chat, you would kind of have to repeat that process. If you do it the way we did it here with that recipe, to start a new chat with a new recipe at Q2 and say, Claude, rebuild our here's the new data. I put the new data in those folders. Rebuild our email marketing strategy for this quarter, and walk away, come back after lunch, and it's ready for you to review. And so there's an aspect of reusability with these agents that is fantastic that you don't get in regular chat.
So I feel like this is a particular product that we could probably go on and on about, do different use cases, but I do want to acknowledge we're coming up on time. The viewers have been with us this entire time, which we appreciate because it sounds like it's probably a really interesting topic to them as well. So our next step internally is to take what was the output from this particular instance, refine it because it's not ready for us to use yet. We still have more work to do. But what we would recommend is people, watching this, trying to figure out, how do I automate more things? This is a great option if your company has access to Claude.
Exactly. And you have a Mac to run the desktop on for today. In the next couple of weeks, hopefully the Windows version will be out. And then I would say if you have someone who's much more technical, they should run full on Claude Code. Claude Cowork is for people who don't want to touch coding stuff. Totally fine. It gives them some of the capabilities of Claude Code with none of the cognitive burden. So, and I know people in our Slack community, Analytics Markets, have asked us for a Claude Code version of a walkthrough, and maybe that's a topic for another live stream. But yes, definitely go ahead and get started. The one last thing I will say is, you doing the Claude Cowork version that we did today, I can then put all those documents, the inputs and the outputs, inside Google Drive, and everyone else can work on them at the same time, which is, again, is can be done with the chat, but it's a lot easier when it's all in the file system.
So, John, man of many words, what questions or thoughts do you have about what we just did?
Yeah, I mean, it's, early stage for this thing, but the thing is, it does have 10 possible things to try, and that's really the end result, right? Is you need to just look at that list and say, okay, we're going to take a shot at 3 of these and put them out there and just test them and see how it works. And a lot of times coming up with that list of like, which way do we go next? That's the hardest part, because you kind of have no idea where it's going to go. So at least if you have some direction that's based on some kind of research, you're saving yourself a lot of time, and you're way better off with your testing than just, what Randy, the intern, came up with last week.
On that note, I think we're going to see you all next time. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for watching today. Be sure to subscribe to our show wherever you're watching it. For more resources and to learn more, check out the Trust Insights podcast at trustinsights.ai/TI podcast, and a weekly email newsletter at trustinsights.ai/newsletter. Got questions about what you saw in today's episode? Join our free Analytics for Marketers Slack group at trustinsights.ai/analytics for marketers. See you next time.